Listening and Speaking for Level 4 students. Chapter 3. The objectives of this chapter include the following. 1. To understand topics related to sociology by activating your background knowledge. 2. To apply that knowledge in listening. 3. To use vocabulary related to sociology in speaking. The vocabulary log of this chapter include words like 1. Unexpected. 2. Disposable. 3. Impolite. 4. Temptation. 5. Mature. 6. Isolated. 7. Correspondence. 8. Disabled. 9. Drawback. 10. Sociologist. 11. Superficial. 12. Harmful. 13. Cyber relationships. Now, you are required to listen to the conversation and then answer the questions that follow.
Mom, I was thinking, I really need a new cell phone.
Do, huh? Well, you already have a phone. Why would you need a new one?
My phone's so old. It's huge, and it doesn't even have a camera.
Oh, I see. And why exactly do you need a phone with a camera?
Camera phones are really very useful, especially in an emergency. Besides, I can take pictures of my friends, and I can send pictures to other people. I mean, everyone has one. Tiffany has had one for over a year.
Right. Well, maybe Tiffany's mother can buy one for you, too.
So will you buy me one? They're not that expensive.
Look, Jessica, you don't need it. Besides, you spend enough time on the phone you have as it is. If you're not on the computer or text messaging someone, you're talking on the phone. And you already have a digital camera. If you want to take pictures, use that.
But Mom, when something unexpected happens, I don't always have my camera with me. Let's say we get into a car accident. If I have my camera phone, I can take a picture of the damage, or I can even take a picture of the other car's license plate.
Look, I happen to have a disposable camera in the car just in case that happens, so that won't be necessary. But listen, that's not even the point. Like I said, how many times have I had to ask you to hang up with the phone you already have and come to dinner or help with the dishes? I've told you how impolite some of your phone behavior is, and I haven't seen much improvement.
Ugh, what do you mean?
Remember our conversation last month about the bill? Your father and I got you the phone for emergencies only.
Yes, I know. Perhaps you and I define emergencies differently.
And I've asked you not to talk loudly on your phone in public. And last week at your cousin Julia's wedding, your phone rang because you hadn't turned it off. That was embarrassing and incredibly rude.
Mom, I understand. Believe me, I won't do that anymore. I'll use the phone less. I'll only use it for emergencies, and I'll keep it silenced when I have to.
And I'm not so sure I like the idea of those camera phones anyway. Do you know what some people are doing with those camera phones? Students are taking pictures of tests and sending them to their friends. I've also heard some people are even taking embarrassing pictures of others and posting them on the internet. I really don't want you to have one. The temptation for abuse is too high.
Really, I can't believe you don't trust me. I would never do anything like that.
Well, maybe you wouldn't, but your friends might. Look, if they thought an embarrassing situation was funny and asked you to take a picture of it, well, you'd be tempted to do it just because they asked you.
Mom, we're not even allowed to use cell phones in school. I already know what to do if I have one. I'd keep the camera closed, and I wouldn't take pictures of anyone unless they said I could.
You know, it's not just at school either, Jessica. People are taking pictures of entire magazines, newspapers, and pages from books without buying them. This has been a real problem for bookstores.
Those are other people, Mom, not me. And I wouldn't use it in bookstores. That's weird. But that's kind of besides the point, Mom. What would I have to do to prove to you that I'm mature enough to own a camera phone?
That's a good question. Well, for one thing, start limiting your calls and being conscientious about using the phone you have. Well, that'll do more to convince me than anything else. Then, when our current cell phone plan ends, maybe we can talk about it. But right now, the answer is no.
Question number 1. What does Jessica want? According to the audio track, Jessica wants a new cell phone with a camera. Jessica wants a new cell phone with a camera. 2. How does her mother feel about what Jessica wants? According to the audio track, Jessica's mother was unsatisfied. Jessica's mother was unsatisfied because she thinks that Jessica does not need a new cell phone. She thinks that Jessica does not need a new cell phone. Yes. Question number 3. At the end of their discussion, does Jessica's mother let Jessica get what she wants? No, she doesn't. No, she doesn't. Listening and speaking for Level 4 students. Chapter 3. Audio 2. Listen to the program about the internet and relationships. After you listen, check the 4 main ideas that are presented.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Viewpoints. Today we're going to talk about the internet and how it affects our social lives. We'll attempt to ask the question, does the internet build relationships or does it encourage isolation? Our guest today is Dr. Rafael Garcia, a sociologist from the University of Massachusetts. Dr. Garcia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, how would you answer that question? Is the internet helping us build relationships, or is it causing us to be more isolated from others?
Well, the answer is not a simple one. The fact is that the internet can help us build relationships, but it can make us more isolated too. Let me explain. In many ways, the internet actually encourages relationships among friends and family members. In several recent studies, for instance, internet users reported that they kept in touch with siblings and other relatives several times a week, and felt email allowed them to keep in touch with family more than contact by phone. Several people also said that because of the internet, they were able to locate family members with whom they had lost contact for many years, just by using certain websites to search for them.
Interesting. So for these people, not only did the internet help them stay in touch, but it helped them reconnect with people they hadn't spoken with in a long time.
Right. But there's a negative side too. Although these internet users reported that they corresponded more often with family members, the content of this correspondence tended to be pretty superficial. They were forwarding each other jokes via email or just instant messaging short notes back and forth. So while they were maintaining contact, they weren't really discussing important topics or getting to know each other better. In other words, their relationships weren't really growing stronger or closer. A few families did report that they used email to address serious matters, but they were the exceptions.
I see. So the internet can be both helpful and harmful to our relationships.
Exactly.
Now, what role do you think the internet plays in the relationships and lives of people who are disabled or who can't leave their homes easily? It would seem that the web would be a great relationship-building tool for them.
Absolutely. For disabled people or people who are very ill, Internet access allows them to develop relationships online, what we call cyber relationships. Basically, it encourages community development and allows these people to feel much less isolated. This was shown in another recent study. According to that study, disabled people felt less lonely and they were able to form good cyber relationships without dealing with the real-life problems of transportation and time constraints. They were able to be in contact with people in similar conditions and share support resources.
That's great.
Yes, it is. Now, I think I should state one important drawback to Internet-based relationships. We have to remember that while we can use email, instant messaging, chat rooms, and other forms of technology, the fact is that we can never really get to know someone very well online. What I mean is that there are limits to how much you can really learn about someone when you're only communicating through a computer. Here's an example. Internet dating has become pretty popular these days. It's a very big business. On the one hand, many single people have the chance to meet people online, get to know them via email and messaging, before actually meeting face-to-face. We've heard stories of people finding their future husbands or wives online, and that's all great. However, the obvious drawback to this is that there have been many cases of people misrepresenting themselves to people they communicate with. In other words, they have not told the truth about who they are, what they do, what they believe, and what they look like. Therefore, when they finally meet in person, the person who has been communicating in good faith is in for a shock.
So what you're saying is that the internet makes it easy for people to lie about themselves and makes it difficult or impossible to really know if someone is who they say they are.
That's right. And that's why the internet can be especially dangerous for children or minors. There have been many instances of grown adults posing as teenagers to trick young people into meeting them face-to-face. Unfortunately, this type of behavior has become very prevalent. But even though it's a common danger, parents can still take certain steps to protect their kids. I recommend that parents keep the family computer in a communal area of the home, like the living room or the family room, so that they can monitor which websites their children are visiting and ask questions about who their kids may be chatting with. It's important for parents to keep an eye on their children in this way.
One last question. Are there any other ways that the internet can have negative effects on our relationships?
Yes, there are. Several studies have shown that people who use the internet excessively may suffer many negative effects both personally and in their social lives. For one, they may be letting their other real-life relationships suffer. In one of these studies, people reported that they didn't spend as much time with their friends and family as they used to, and had more feelings of loneliness if they spent long periods of time online. These people also stated they had less time for activities that they used to do on a regular basis. Basically, they had less time for real-life activities because they were spending too much time in front of their computer screens. Additionally, the kinds of relationships these people established online were not as deep or as strong as their relationships in real life. In an online relationship, if you don't like the direction the communication is going, you can simply log off. In real life, you have to deal with people you may not always get along with. In other words, it may be easier to form relationships online. You can be less polite, less sensitive, and if you don't like the way the relationship is developing, you can just log off or stop returning someone's email. But while the internet might make things easier, it doesn't help you develop the kinds of social skills that make it possible for you to develop strong, long-lasting friendships. So, I'd say be careful of spending excessive amounts of time online. Cyber relationships can never take the place of real face-to-face communication.
Thanks again, Dr. Garcia.
The first main idea mentioned in this program was families often use the internet to address serious matters. The second main idea was people cannot really get to know someone online. The third main idea was excessive use of the internet can have negative effects. And the last main idea mentioned in this program was the internet can help us build relationships, but it can also lead to isolation. So these are the four main ideas mentioned in this program, and the rest of the ideas were secondary. Listening and speaking for Level 4 students. Chapter 5. The objectives of this chapter include the following. 1. To listen to topics related to prizes, Nobel Prizes. 2. To reflect on listening. 3. To identify restatements and explanations. 4. To review nouns for professions with IST. The vocabulary log of this chapter includes the following. 1. Prize. 2. Destructive. 3. Discipline. 4. Candidate. 5. Donate. 6. Eligible. 7. Corruption. 8. Enemy. 9. Sentenced. 10. Inaugurated. 11. Policy. 12. Prospective. 13. Reconciliation. Now, listen to the student presentation, then choose the correct answer for each question.
Hi, everyone. Our group decided to give our presentation on the history of the Nobel Prize and its founder, Alfred Nobel. First, I'll tell you a little about Alfred Nobel. Alice will explain the procedure for the Nobel Prize nominations, and Walter will talk a little about a controversy surrounding the 1962 Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine. Okay. Alfred Nobel was born in Sweden in 1833 and was himself an inventor, scientist, and international businessman. He is probably most well known for the award that carries his name, but he also was the inventor of dynamite. Although he had intended dynamite to be used in the building of huge engineering projects, he was shocked by the destructive purposes it was being used for. For this reason, in his last will, he left more than 90% of his estate, that is, almost his entire fortune, to establish the Nobel Prizes for those who, during the preceding year, shall have conferred the greatest benefit on mankind. In other words, he wanted to give awards each year to people who had done something important and good for the world. The awards are given in the following disciplines: medicine, chemistry, literature, peace, and physics. There's also a prize for economics that carries Nobel's name, but it was established much later and is not truly a Nobel Prize. What I mean is, it was not one of the prizes that Alfred Nobel himself founded. Now, Alice is going to tell you a little about how the nominations are done.
Thank you, Robbie. The process for determining the recipients begins more than 1 year before the awards are actually handed out. What I'm trying to say is, a committee begins to think about possible candidates each fall, and then the prizes are finally handed out to the winners in the winter of the following year. There are sometimes as many as 250 candidates for a particular award. However, the nominees have no idea that they have been nominated, and they are often surprised to find out that they've won. Every winner receives a certificate and a medal. Each winner is also awarded a little over $1 million as well. Winners often donate the money to projects or causes that are important to them, but this isn't required. That is, they can keep the money if they want to. Another interesting fact is that it's not customary to make awards posthumously. In other words, Nobel Prize winners must still be alive at the time the awards are announced. The presentation of the Nobel Prizes takes place every December 10th in Stockholm, although the Nobel Peace Prize is awarded in Norway. The first Nobel Prizes were presented in 1901, 5 years after Alfred Nobel's death. That year, Wilhelm Röntgen received the prize in physics for his work with X-rays. Henry Douant, who established the Red Cross, shared the Peace Prize that year with another nominee. Past winners of the Nobel Peace Prize include former President of the United States Jimmy Carter, Kim Dae-jung of South Korea, former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, Nelson Mandela and Frederick de Klerk of South Africa, and Mother Teresa for her work with the poor. Organizations are also eligible to win. Past organizations with this honor include Doctors Without Borders and Amnesty International. Now, Walter is going to talk about a controversy over a past prize awarded in 1962 and present our conclusion.
Yes, thanks, Alice. In 1962, the Nobel Prize for Physiology and Medicine was awarded to Francis Crick, James Watson, and Maurice Wilkins for their discovery of the structure of DNA. Rosalind Franklin, a woman, was a chemist who worked with prize winner Maurice Wilkins. One day, Wilkins showed James Watson some X-rays that Franklin had taken of DNA, and it was these X-rays that enabled Crick and Watson to see and understand the double helix DNA structure, something Franklin herself had been working towards. Unfortunately, Franklin had died of cancer 4 years before the award was given, but many of her admirers feel her contributions towards the discovery of DNA have been neglected. And since, as Alice has mentioned, prizes are not awarded posthumously, her name will not be added to those of Crick, Watson, and Wilkins. To finish up, are we any closer to achieving the goals of Alfred Nobel's humanitarian dream today than we were back when the first awards were presented? That's hard to say. However, receiving the award is still an honor recognized the world over and serves as a reminder that individuals can and do make a difference. That's all. Thank you, and we'll be happy to answer any questions now.
Question number 1. Why did Alfred Nobel establish the Nobel Prizes? A. To recognize people who work to improve the world. B. To celebrate his invention of dynamite. C. To end controversy in the field of physics. The correct answer is A. To recognize people who work to improve the world. Question number 2. Which of the statements is not true? A. Many winners do not keep the prize money. B. Candidates usually know they have been nominated. C. The prize given in the field of economics is not really a Nobel Prize. Actually, all of these statements are true except for B. Candidates usually know they have been nominated. In fact, candidates do not know they have been nominated. Question number 3. Why do some people believe that Rosalind Franklin's name should have been added to those of Watson, Crick, and Wilkins for the 1962 Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine? A. She cannot receive the award posthumously. B. Without looking at her work, Watson, Crick, and Wilkins would not have discovered the structure of the DNA double helix. C. She alone was responsible for identifying the DNA double helix. Actually, the correct answer is A. She cannot receive the award posthumously. Listening and speaking for Level 4 students. Chapter 5. Audio 2. Listen to a college lecture, then choose the correct answer for the following questions.
Okay, does anyone know who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2000?
Was it Desmond Tutu?
No, sorry. Any other guesses?
I know, Octavio Paz?
Wrong again. Anyone else?
Wait, did you say in 2000?
Yes, 2000.
Oh, I think it was Kim Dae-jung, the former president of South Korea?
Yes, that's right. Kim Dae-jung. And does anyone know why he won the Peace Prize? Okay, well, let's start from the beginning. Kim was born on an island in a part of the country that's not really well respected, but he ran for government offices in spite of that. He was critical of many former political leaders and policies. To this day, he's known as a man who stood up against government corruption. But, as a result, he had a bunch of attempts on his life, at least 3 or 4.
You're saying that people tried to kill him 3 or 4 times? Wow! People must have been really threatened by him.
Yes, I guess you could say that. In fact, this one time, he was taken out in a boat by an enemy of his and was on the verge of being thrown in the ocean, but at the last moment, he was released.
That's incredible.
Yes, it is. On another occasion, he was sentenced to death, but once again, he was released. He was allowed to leave the country, and he traveled to the United States and spent some time teaching at Harvard before returning home.
Do you mean he went back to Korea?
Yes, he did, and he was immediately imprisoned when he arrived.
Did you say he was thrown back in prison?
Yes, that's what I said. So eventually he gets out of prison, and he gets elected president in 1997. He was inaugurated in 1998. Immediately he began to improve economic conditions in the country. But the thing he's known for most is what's called his Sunshine Policy. You see, during his presidency, the leaders of South and North Korea actually sat down to talk about the prospect of possible reunification of the two countries. This was huge. The two sides actually agreed on several issues, including what the steps toward a reconciliation would look like. They discussed how the two countries might improve their relationship in the future. I'm not sure how much was really accomplished at these talks, but it was the beginning of a dialogue that had never happened before.
So why is it called the Sunshine Policy?
Good question. The name comes from one of Aesop's fables. Maybe you know it. It's the one about the sun and the wind competing to see who is stronger. There's a man on the road wearing a coat. The sun and the wind argue about who is stronger, so they make a bet that says the one that can make the man take off his coat is the winner. So the wind blows and blows, but that just makes the man hold his coat tightly to him. So then the sun tries, and the sun's gentle rays make the man remove his coat.
Oh, I get it. The idea is that gentle pressure is more effective in resolving conflict than aggressive strength.
Exactly. Now, what do you all think about that?
Question number 1. Who was the Nobel Peace Prize winner in 2000s? A. Octavio Paz. B. Desmond Tutu. C. Kim Dae-jung. The correct answer is C. Kim Dae-jung, the former president of South Korea. Question number 2. What did he win it for? A. His work at Harvard. B. His Sunshine Policy. C. His economic reforms. Actually, Kim Dae-jung won the Nobel Prize for Peace because of his Sunshine Policy. Listening and Speaking for Level 4 students. Chapter 6. The objectives of this chapter include the following. 1. To understand topics related to earth sciences. 2. Apply this knowledge in understanding natural phenomena. 3. Reflect on listening. The vocabulary log of this chapter includes the following. 1. Hurricane. 2. Desertification. 3. Arid. 4. Drought. 5. Crops. 6. Irrigation. 7. Degradation. 8. Hunter. 9. Tropical. 10. Thunderstorm. 11. Condensation. 12. Evaporation. 13. Coastline. Now, listen to the lecture and answer the following questions.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Albert Park, and I'm from UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Program. Today, I'm going to talk to you all a bit about a serious problem affecting over 100 countries. That problem is desertification, the process by which healthy, usable land becomes arid and unusable. As you might imagine, this process does not happen overnight. It takes many years, in some cases centuries, but it can be stopped, and I'll talk about how in a moment. First of all, however, let's consider what causes desertification to happen. As you'll see on this slide, it happens for a number of reasons. It takes poor weather conditions like drought combined with poor land management to create this disastrous situation. Here's a common scenario. Let's say thousands or millions of people in a particular region or country need trees for construction purposes, for making paper, and for other uses. So, of course, forests get cut down. However, if the forests aren't replaced, soil that was held in place by the tree roots gets swept away. This top layer of soil is where plants get nutrients. So, if there's no topsoil, plants won't grow. Without plants holding the earth in place, these areas also experience more flooding, which destroys even more of the vegetation. Over time, the land continues to suffer degradation until eventually it becomes barren and desert-like. Another contributing factor is overgrazing. An example of this is when people settle in one place, their livestock, cattle, goats, and sheep eat food grown on the same piece of land year after year after year until the minerals in the soil are used up. When that happens, farmers can no longer grow crops there. So the result is that dirt blows away and farmers have to find other places to live. Not only that, but the cattle compact the earth with their hooves so tightly that water from irrigation or rainfall just runs off without penetrating the ground. And if the land is not irrigated properly, the level of salt in the soil can rise, thus adding to the degradation of the land. As I said, this is taking place in over 100 countries around the world, and it's a problem that is affecting acres and acres of land. And obviously, the loss of usable land affects the animals and people who live in these areas. These barren spots will not support life, which means these people have to go elsewhere to support themselves. In fact, some experts predict that as many as 60 million people will have been displaced because of desertification by the year 2020. And this mass migration will, of course, put strain on the existing resources in those areas the people move to. This is exactly what's happening in parts of Africa, in Asia, and in parts of Latin and North America. So, what can be done to stop desertification from happening? Well, there are many things that people and nations are doing to stop the spread of deserts. For instance, one solution is to plant young trees where deforestation has occurred. As the trees grow, the roots will once again hold the earth in place, thus protecting it. People in some areas are planting rows of trees and building fences at the edges of deserts to act as a windbreak to stop the approach of the sand. Obviously, proper crop rotation and reseeding will help prevent soil erosion, and wise use of irrigation techniques and existing water supplies will also improve conditions. So, all hope is not lost. There is a lot we can do to stop encroaching desertification, but more steps need to be taken immediately. The programs in place in Africa, Asia, and elsewhere need more funding, and they need more publicity. That's one of the reasons that we're here at this conference. Now, if any of you would like to find out more about desertification and what's being done about it, there are many resources available. For instance, you could visit the UNEP website or the website for the USGS, the U.S. Geological Survey. Both sites have plenty of information. Now I'd like to open up the floor for questions and comments.
Question number 1. Who is giving the lecture? Okay. The person who gave the lecture called Albert Park, and he is from UNEP. And UNEP stands for United Nations Environmental Programme. Question number 2. How many countries have areas that suffer from desertification? According to Mr. Albert, there are over 100 countries. Question number 3. How long does it take for desertification to take place? Again, according to Mr. Albert, it takes many years, and sometimes, or in some cases, centuries. Listening and speaking for Level 4 students. Chapter 6, Audio 2. Listen to the interview. Then write T for true and F for false for each of the following statements.
Every year, thousands of people lose their homes, property, and some their lives due to hurricanes. Thankfully, with modern technology, we can know when a hurricane is forming and we can predict the general direction it will take. Now, when we are notified of a hurricane's approach, most of us would be too nervous to stay and watch the storm, let alone deliberately enter it. But there is a group of people that actually fly directly into hurricanes to study them. In fact, our guest today, Rick Lakeland, has done this countless times. He and those like him are known as hurricane hunters. Rick, before you tell us about what you do, first tell us about the hurricanes. What are they exactly? And what is it that distinguishes a hurricane from, well, just a regular storm?
Well, a hurricane is a tropical storm that has wind speeds of at least 119 kilometers per hour. That's equal to 74 miles per hour. It's called a hurricane in the Atlantic Ocean and parts of the Pacific Ocean. But we call that same kind of storm a typhoon in the Northwest Pacific. As you can see, different regions of the world have different names for storms of this size.
And these storms tend to form at certain times of the year, right?
Yes, there's a hurricane season, which runs roughly from May to November. To understand why there's a season, we have to understand how a hurricane forms. 3 conditions have to exist before a hurricane can take shape. You need warm water, low pressure, and high wind speeds. Most Atlantic hurricanes begin off the western coast of Africa, near the equator. And the water is warmest there from about May to November. Typically, a hurricane starts out as a low-pressure thunderstorm over the ocean. The warm air over the water rises and begins to condense, making water vapor when it comes in contact with cooler air. Heat is released from this condensation, and the heat warms the cooler air at that higher level. This newly warm air rises upward and out, and is replaced by the warm air rising from below. This creates a constant flow of warm air rising from the ocean surface to higher levels. Wind meeting at the ocean surface forces more warm air upward. As the air rises, we see an increase in the rotation and speed of the wind. At higher elevations, the wind blows the rising warm air outward, creating a constant movement of rising warm air to upper altitudes. At this point, the storm is kind of like an engine that runs on a continuous cycle of rising warm air and evaporation. Interestingly, north of the equator, hurricanes rotate west to east, or counterclockwise, while in the southern hemisphere, they turn the other way, clockwise. Hurricanes are categorized by size according to the Saffir-Simpson scale. A hurricane with a scale of 1 is weak, while a 5-category hurricane is the largest. These are the ones that typically do the most damage.
Okay, thanks. Now, can you tell us a little bit about what you do as a hurricane hunter?
Sure. When it's gone through the formation, let me explain. What I mean is that once a hurricane has fully formed, well, that's when hurricane hunters like me go to work. Basically, a hurricane hunter flies into hurricanes and collects information on wind speed, rain, air pressure, and exact location of the eye or center of a hurricane, among other things. Then we send this information back to the National Hurricane Center.
Wow. Aren't there safer ways to get that kind of information? I mean, safer than flying right into a hurricane?
Not really. You see, weather satellites let us know if a hurricane is formed, but the images they capture can't tell us everything. The data that hunters collect can help accurately predict where a hurricane might move off the ocean and make landfall, so people living along coastlines can be warned of any danger. Plus, the measurements and readings we make add to our general understanding of how hurricanes behave. Although this might seem like a crazy and dangerous occupation, we've been trained, and safety is our #1 concern whenever we fly a mission.
And how exactly does one enter a hurricane?
Well, to approach a hurricane, we enter the storm gradually. We can't be in a rush, and we can't fly in too fast. But the flight can be bumpy, but it usually smooths out when we finally penetrate the eye wall. That's the strongest ring of winds near the center of the eye of the hurricane.
How long do you spend flying around inside the hurricane once you've entered it?
Once we're in the storm, we don't leave right away. To make sure our readings are as accurate as possible, we'll enter and re-enter the eye, gathering information several times in one mission. A typical flight might last around 11 hours.
Thanks to the efforts of hunters like Rick Lakeland, many people in coastal communities have been warned in plenty of time to prepare for hurricane landfall. They've been able to board up their homes and businesses, or when they can't stay, evacuate the area. The hurricane hunters provide a valuable service to residents along the coast, and in my opinion, have one of the most interesting jobs I've ever heard of. Rick, thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you for telling us a little about it.
1. A tropical storm in the Northwest Pacific is called a typhoon. This is a true statement. 2. Heat is released when warm air rises, cools, and condenses. This statement is false, because heat is released when warm air rises and condenses only. 3. Hurricanes rotate east to west north of the equator. This statement is false, because hurricanes rotate west to east north of the equator. 4. A Category 5 hurricane is very strong. This statement is true. 5. Hurricane hunters look for ways to stop the destructive power of hurricanes. This statement is true. 6. Hurricane hunters fly quickly into the eye of the storm. This statement is false, because hurricane hunters fly gradually into the eye of the storm, not quickly, gradually. Number 7. They collect data which adds to our understanding of the nature of hurricanes. This statement is true. And the last statement, hurricane hunters enter and re-enter the storm 1 or 2 times during a mission. This statement is true. Listening and speaking for Level 4 students. Chapter 8. The objectives of this chapter include the following. 1. To understand topics related to psychology. 2. To get knowledge about signaling, comparison, and contrast. 3. To enable students using opinion expressions. The vocabulary log of this chapter includes the following. 1. Characteristics. 2. Optimism. 3. Pessimism. 4. Attitudes. 5. Stressful. 6. Questionnaires. 7. Task. 8. Assessment. 9. Visualization. 10. Bleachers. 11. Distractions. 12. Meditate. Now, listen to the lecture and answer the following questions.
Today we're going to spend most of the class talking about the personality characteristics of optimism and pessimism, and the effects these attitudes have on a person's emotional and physical being. First, what are optimism and pessimism? Optimism is typically defined as the attitude of believing in and expecting positive results, while pessimism is the tendency to believe in negative outcomes. You may have heard this referred to as seeing the glass half empty or half full. The idea is that pessimists see what's missing, or that the glass is half empty, while optimists see what is there, or that the glass is half full. Where do these attitudes come from? What is it that makes one person generally optimistic while someone else is usually pessimistic? Psychologists and researchers are not really sure, although it appears that genetics may play a part. What we do know is these two attitudes play a big part in the outcomes in a person's life. For example, in medicine, studies have shown that patients who scored highly as pessimists take longer to recover from major surgery and are more likely to have complications from that. Additionally, pessimists tend not to take very good care of themselves in general. On the other hand, people who were rated optimistic tend to be healthier. Additionally, researchers looking at students in stressful majors have found that optimists consistently were more successful in surmounting obstacles and, in fact, when suffering a setback, came back and overcame the difficulty successfully. In contrast, pessimists did worse when attempting a retry. Another interesting study followed salespeople and measured their success in closing deals. As you might have guessed, the optimists outsold the pessimists every time. Yes, you have a question?
Yeah, isn't it possible that optimists are just in denial about how bad things really are? That they're not in touch with reality, and so they're hopeful in hopeless situations?
That's a good question. At a glance, it might seem as if that were true. However, the research shows that true optimists are not in denial, that they do feel painful emotions and work through traumatic experiences, but are hopeful about the eventual result. Another advantage is that optimists seem to have strong problem-solving skills, and this helps them in dealing with stressful situations. Yes.
How can you determine if a person is pessimistic or optimistic?
The most common ways that researchers decide if you are an optimist or a pessimist are by studying your answers to certain questionnaires and by listening to your speech patterns.
So, is it possible to change? I mean, if you're a pessimist, can you suddenly become an optimist?
Another good question. Well, first, it does seem that people have one or the other general tendency throughout their life. In fact, these traits show up in early childhood, and optimistic parents tend to have optimistic children. Of course, as a parent, you can encourage your children to be optimistic. One suggestion is to give them tasks that they can perform and succeed at, as well as tasks that they can attempt, fail, and try again successfully. This teaches them an attitude of optimism in the face of failure. Now, to answer your question, if you are not a natural-born optimist, there are things you can do to develop a more positive outlook. Can you guess what they might be?
I guess you can force yourself not to think negatively.
That's true. If you catch yourself having negative thoughts about yourself, like many pessimists do, stop and think about what's going right in your life. Is your assessment of your abilities based in reality, or are you too hard on yourself? Okay, now I'd like to hear from the rest of you. What do you think? Are you an optimist or a pessimist? And tell me subjectively how that attitude has influenced your life.
Question number 1. The expression seeing the glass half full refers to A. Optimists or pessimists? Actually, this expression refers to A. Optimists. 2. Space may determine if a person is an optimist or pessimist. Is it education or genetics? According to the lecturer, genetics may determine if a person is an optimist or pessimist. So the correct answer is B. 3. Recover more quickly from surgery and have fewer complications. A. Optimists or pessimists? The correct answer is A. Optimists. Question number 4. Space overcome obstacles more easily. Are they optimists or pessimists? Again, according to the lecturer, the correct answer is A. Optimists. 5. Space find it easier to admit how bad a situation is. A. Optimists, pessimists? Actually, pessimists find it easier to admit how bad a situation is. Number 6. If you are a pessimist by nature, you space change. So if you are born pessimist by nature, you can't change. Listening and speaking for level 4 students. Chapter 8. Audio 2. Listen to the conversation and then write T for true and F for false statements.
Jeremy, congratulations! You've won again! You've run the best times all day. You've beaten everyone.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a pretty good day.
I thought I was ready for this, but you blew me away. How'd you improve so much? Are you working out more?
More than I used to, but yeah, I've been doing something different too. I've changed my approach to training.
What do you mean?
Well, I got a visualization coach, this guy who helps me with my training.
A what coach?
A visualization coach. He helps me with my workout. He's like a mind coach. He makes me think about and picture what I'm about to do, like run a race before it happens. I focus on seeing myself. I see myself running faster than I ever have before and leaving everyone else behind and finishing first.
You're kidding me.
Look, at first I was like, this is kind of nuts. But my mom saw this program on TV about how Olympic athletes use these kinds of coaches all the time. And so she did some research and found my coach. There's a lot of them out there. I was surprised.
So how does it work?
Well, Caesar, that's my coach's name. He has me imagine myself at the starting line and then seeing myself off the mark first and leaving everyone else behind. That's not all. He tries to get me to see myself doing it too, as if I were a fan in the stands.
What? Like you're in the bleachers?
Yeah, exactly.
And it works?
Well, yeah, my times have been better than ever before.
It sounds easy.
Yeah, I guess it does, but Caesar has me do other things too, like he'll play fan noises like we're in a real stadium when I'm doing my training with him. It's because he wants me to get used to noise distractions and visualize myself winning in spite of them. One time he even sprayed me with water like it was raining, so I had to see myself winning in the rain. Yeah, it is strange, but I'm happy with the results. That's for sure. I want to go to college, and that means I need money, so I'm hoping all this training will help get me a scholarship.
So, has he taught you anything else?
Yeah, he's taught me to do a little mental warm-up at the starting line, too.
Were you doing that today?
I sure was, and personally, I believe it paid off.
Yeah, it did.
You know, it's also not just for winning. He has me, sometimes he asks me to think about what to do if I have a problem on the track, like how to handle it, like what to do if another runner goes down or if I get a bad start. Thinking about it before it happens is supposed to help me get over it.
And I've been killing myself with workouts. I should have just meditated.
Yeah, but I gotta, you gotta keep working out and training too. You can't just meditate in the dark room and go win races.
Yeah, guess not. So, I still don't get why exactly it works.
Well, it's related to how your brain works. When I imagine myself doing these things, my brain kind of thinks I really am. So the message from my brain warms up my muscles and kind of paves the way for my legs and body to move. It makes it easier to move.
Well, it sure is working for you.
Yeah, it surprised me too. When I started, I really didn't know if it would work. And I was like, Mom, save your money, but it's really, it's working.
So, can you give me this Caesar's number?
No way, man. Get your own coach.
1. Jeremy has improved. This statement is true. Number 2. Jeremy is doing more exercises. This statement is false because it wasn't a matter of doing more exercises, but Jeremy changed his way of training. 3. Olympic athletes use visualizations coaches. This statement is true. Number 4. A visualization coach helps a person imagine doing something well before he or she actually does it. And also this statement is true. Number 5. Jeremy meets his coach every day. This statement is true. Number 6. Caesar tells Jeremy to think about what to do if he has a problem while on the track. This statement is also true. Number 7. Jeremy does not need to work out or train anymore. This statement is false because actually Jeremy does need to work out or train. Number 8. Thinking about what you are going to do helps you when you actually do it. This statement is true. The last statement. Jeremy is going to give Rob his coach's number. This statement is false because Jeremy refused to give Rob his coach's number. Listening and speaking for Level 4 students. Chapter 9. The objectives of this chapter include the following. 1. To understand topics related to health. 2. To use paraphrasing to work out meaning. 3. To understand collocations with verbs and prepositions. The vocabulary log of this chapter includes the following. 1. Stress. 2. Excessive. 3. Response. 4. Moderate. 5. Defensive. 6. Symptoms. 7. Suffer. 8. Depression. 9. Volunteer. 10. Adopt. 11. Blood pressure. 12. Aquarium. 13. Allergy. 14. Pets. Now, listen to the program and fill in the gaps with the correct answer.
Today's topic for Health Watch is stress, a common concern of young and old for good reason. First, we'll hear a definition and some examples. Then we'll talk about the impact of stress and what can be done to alleviate or prevent stress. Webster's Dictionary defines stress as a physical, chemical, or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental tension and may be a factor in disease causation. Stressors, or causes of stress, include arguments, excessive physical or emotional demands, misunderstandings, changes, or anything which upsets homeostasis, or our balance. Everyone has probably had the experience of feeling like everything is going along just fine, and then something happens to completely change all that. Responses to the situation may include wanting to run away and put some distance between the situation and oneself, or the opposite response of wanting to face the situation, work hard, and put things back as they were. These two opposite responses are what scientists call the fight or flight stress response. Either we want to take flight, run away, or we want to stay and fight. But can stress be good? Well, sometimes yes. Stress in moderation is normal and not always negative. Some people believe they're more productive and effective when they operate under stress or close to a deadline. In stressful situations, the body releases the stress hormones cortisone and adrenaline, which raise the blood pressure. If we fight or take on a defensive action, the stress hormones are used up and the effects of stress are reduced. If, however, we do not face the situation, if we flee instead, the hormones and chemicals that are not released stay in the blood. This then leads to symptoms like tenseness, anxiety, and high blood pressure. In excess, stress can have very negative effects on our physical and mental health, our work, and our relationships. Getting only a few hours of sleep for several days in a row can lower the body's defenses and make us irritable or nervous. Excessive stress can impair our judgment and cause us to make mistakes in our work, possibly jeopardizing lives. Family, friends, and coworkers may put up with the whirlwind lifestyle of someone who is constantly under stress, but at some point, the relationship may suffer, deteriorate, and even break up. Aside from the ruinous impact on one's disposition, work, and relationships, understanding stress is also important because it can exhaust the immune system, resulting in illness. According to recent research, 70% to 90% of illness is stress-related. For example, an argument with a family member, good friend, or colleague can result in bad feelings and may even increase to the point of causing physical illness, such as a headache, stomachache, or depression. Constant stress, which has become more common in the workplace, can lead to chronic health problems. It's obvious that this affects workers, but employers feel the impact too in lower productivity and, as a result, in economic terms as well. The percentage of healthcare expenses for workers with high stress levels is reported to be almost 50% greater than for other workers. So what can we do to reduce stress? One of the first things to do is to observe and note personal stressors. Are there simple changes you can make that might result in avoiding these stressors? For example, if getting stuck in traffic every morning means starting the day fuming, try to leave earlier to avoid the rush hour. Second, help the body and mind by providing regular rest and relaxation. Classes in yoga, including conscious breathing techniques and meditation, can provide respite in the day or week, a kind of safe haven from stress. Other activities recommended for release of tension include getting exercise, having a massage, and, believe it or not, getting a pet.
1. Confronting situation instead of running away or avoiding it is an example of the fight response. 2. In stressful situations, the hormones cortisol and adrenaline are released, which rise the blood pressure. So in stressful situations, the hormones cortisol and adrenaline are released, which rise the blood pressure. Number 3, nearly 70 to 90% of illness is stress-related. Number 4, employers should try to reduce stress in the workplace because it affects their productivity. Number 5. Some physical effects of stress include headache and depression. And the last statement, one thing we can do to reduce stress is to avoid stressful situations. Listening and speaking for Level 4 students. Chapter 9, Audio 2. Listen to the interview. As you listen, choose the correct answer for each of the following questions.
On today's program, we're delighted to have as our guest Professor Ellen Yang, a research scientist at the University of Buffalo who's been studying the therapeutic effects of pet ownership. Welcome to the program, Dr. Yang.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Professor Yang, I think most people are familiar with helper dogs that work with the disabled, guide dogs for the blind, for example. But your team has found some intriguing results measuring stress levels among pet owners and non-pet owners.
That's right. In a study done at the University of Buffalo, we discovered that the blood pressure of pet owners, in this case dog owners, rose only a fraction of those who did not have dogs when experiencing stressful situations. The study involved 60 volunteers who were all given 2 stressful tasks to complete. One was giving a speech in front of an audience, and the other task was putting a hand in ice-cold water. Their blood pressure levels were taken before the stressful tasks and then during the stressful tasks. Half of those volunteers were then given dogs. They adopted these dogs, and then, 6 months later, all 60 of the volunteers were brought back to perform the same 2 tasks again. Again, their blood pressure was measured before and after. The result was that during the stressful tasks, giving a speech and holding their hands in cold water, the blood pressure of the dog owners was much lower than that of the other group. So it seems that although they were all put through the same situations, the dog owners suffered less stress.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes, it is. What's more, we later gave the other group dogs as well, and we found after 6 months their blood pressure had dropped as well.
Incredible. To achieve these kinds of stress-reducing results, does it matter what kind of animal a person has?
Oh, interestingly enough, we believe the effect is the same regardless of the pet involved. In another study we conducted, we measured blood pressure and muscle tension in a group of people before and after watching fish in an aquarium. Those that watched the fish for several minutes were much more relaxed and had lower blood pressure levels than those that did not look at the aquarium.
So it seems that if we lead a stressful life and don't have a pet, we should maybe run out and get one.
Yes, it does seem that way. And it's not only stress levels that are being affected by our animal friends. There's increasing proof that having a pet at work seems to relax workers and at the same time make them more productive.
Yes, I think I've heard of that, especially in casual work environments like in some high-tech companies, for example.
Yes, but we've also seen this in busy professional settings such as law and accounting firms.
Really?
Oh, yes. However, this is not something that's suitable for everyone. Before instituting a pet-friendly office, everyone involved needs to agree that it will work for that particular office, since, many people have allergies caused by cats, for example. Additionally, there need to be guidelines in place to determine where bathroom and food and water areas are. So, although having pets in the workplace can make an office more productive, care needs to be taken to make sure it's a situation that will work for everyone.
True. I think I've heard of pet therapy also being used in prisons and nursing homes.
Absolutely. Caring for an animal can be very therapeutic. It helps prisoners develop a loving relationship with a living creature. And, therefore, when these people have been released, they're used to the socializing influence an animal can have. And in nursing homes, when animals are brought in, the people there cheer up, laugh, and talk much more. It's really very dramatic. I think we're just now beginning to realize the effects of having animals as companions.
Yes, it certainly seems that way. In addition to lowering stress levels, is there anything else you would like to tell us on this subject?
Oh, certainly. Other studies have shown that elderly pet owners feel needed and less lonely and have a sense of responsibility to their pet. And so therefore they live longer than those who don't care for an animal. Additionally, in one study, pet owners with heart problems lived an average of 1 year longer after leaving the hospital than those that did not have a pet. One obvious result is the increase in physical activity a dog owner enjoys by walking a dog. This added exercise increases blood flow to the brain and can produce endorphins, natural feel-good hormones that add to an overall sense of well-being.
Any last word of advice for our listeners?
Yes, one note of caution. Before getting any animal, potential pet owners need to remember that this is a long-term relationship on which the animal's welfare depends. People must realize that there is a significant time commitment in terms of caring for an animal, and that in addition to purchasing food, toys, cages, and what have you, veterinarian bills can be very pricey. Pet owners have to be ready for that responsibility and be sure that having a pet won't create stress for them.
Right. I guess anyone listening should make sure the pet they choose makes sense for their particular home situation.
Absolutely. One problem we really want to avoid is having pets returned to shelters because owners get home with their new family members and then realize they're unequipped to take care of them.
Right. Well, thank you again, Professor Yang, for coming today.
Question number 1. How many volunteers were used in the dog ownership study? A. 6. B. 60. C. 66. According to the audio track, the correct answer is B. 60. 2. What were the 2 stressful tasks the groups had to do? A. Give a speech and put a hand in icy water. B. Give a speech and train a dog. C. Give a speech and measure blood pressure levels. The correct answer is A. Give a speech and put a hand in icy water. 3. At the end of the study, which group had the higher blood pressure? A. The group that got dogs. B. The group that did not get dogs. C. Both groups had the same blood pressure levels. The correct answer is B. The group that did not get dogs. Number 4. According to Dr. Yang, what are some benefits of having a pet in the workplace? A. It relaxes employees and makes them more productive. B. It teaches employees important skills. C. It encourages employees to work together to care for the animal. According to Dr. Yang, the correct answer is A. It relaxes employees and makes them more productive. Number 5. According to the interview, on average, how much longer did heart patients with pets live? A. About 1 month. B. About 6 months. C. About 1 year. The correct answer is C. About 1 year. Number 6. According to the interview, when considering adopting a pet, what should people think about? A. The expenses that pets bring. B. Whether their home is big enough. C. Whether they are allergic to animals. According to the interview, the correct answer is A. The expenses that pets bring. Listening and speaking for Level 4 students. Chapter 10. The objectives of this chapter include the following. 1. To understand topics related to management. 2. To reflect on listening. 3. To use words related to management. The vocabulary log of this chapter includes 1. Entrepreneur. 2. Strengths. 3. Reward. 4. Monitor. 5. Standards. 6. Micromanagement. 7. Delegate. 8. Immigrant. 9. Self-employed. 10. Diverse. 11. Bakery. 12. Babysitting. 13. Nail salon. Now, listen to a lecture and then answer the following questions.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you all to today's seminar on Principles of Good Management. Our first session of the day is a kind of overview. What I want to do is introduce some of the points that we're going to be discussing throughout the rest of the seminar. Now, later in the day, we'll be thinking much more carefully about each of these items, and you'll have a chance to put each of these points into action. But for now, we want to take a brief look at what we'll be covering during the rest of the seminar. Now, before we get started, could I see a show of hands? How many of you are currently in management positions? Okay, looks like almost everyone is. And how many of you are studying management in school or expect to be managers in the future? All right. And, well, that looks like everyone else. Good. Today, I'm going to talk about characteristics that good bosses and managers share. Please direct your attention to the first point on the screen. Okay. First, we see that good managers are good role models for their employees. They tend to lead by example. They understand a company's beliefs, practice them themselves, and earn the respect of the people they supervise. Next, we see that another characteristic of effective managers is that they see the unique strengths of their employees and try to utilize those strengths in their organization. This kind of manager observes what tasks his or her people do well, what responsibilities they learn quickly, and which ones they enjoy doing. And a good manager will reward them by giving them tasks that encourage the use of these skills. Now, excellent managers want their team to grow, to take on additional responsibility, and to mentor others. And they do what's necessary to make that happen. As this next screen shows, good managers understand the direction their organization is moving in and embrace that vision and communicate it to the team, all the while being focused on the company targets. These people also expect their employees to meet the standards they set. But a good manager will always give employees the tools and opportunities to do so. And not only that, but a good manager will check up on employees to make sure that they're working toward meeting those standards. Now, that doesn't mean being a micromanager. It doesn't mean that you should be checking up on every detail of a person's work. No one likes to be micromanaged. It's not only inefficient, but it tells your staff that you don't believe they can do the work. Trust that the people you hired are capable of doing the job. And you'll have to accept that mistakes will be made. In fact, a good manager uses mistakes as teaching or training opportunities. Ultimately, managers that spend their time micromanaging employees are just plain ineffective, because they should be spending time on projects that truly need their attention. Next point. A good manager delegates tasks that don't need his or her attention. This allows people the chance to exhibit willingness to take on responsibility. We'll talk a lot more about that later, but it's vital. As we see here, I also believe that a great manager has a personal life. He or she makes time for family and friends and leisure time activities. Why? Well, I feel you cannot give to others what you do not have. And if you're burned out from working 70 hours a week, how much energy and creativity can you bring to work? Not very much. Good managers take care of themselves by getting enough sleep, eating right, and getting exercise. This serves as a lifestyle example to others. And again, this is my opinion, it makes the whole team more effective. And a more effective workplace meets its goals. Finally, whenever I give this lecture, I'm almost always asked about what to do with a bad manager. And I'm sure everyone in this room has, at one time or another, had one of those types of supervisors. We'll discuss this at length this afternoon. But for now, I'll just say this. The characteristics of bad managers run the gamut from micromanaging to bullying to just plain being ineffective. And short of quitting, there isn't much you can do, since it's unlikely that your boss is going to change. So if he or she won't, you will have to. You may have to work around your boss to get things done, or make connections with others in key positions in other departments so that your productivity is minimally impacted. Don't let this person stop you from achieving your goals. Now, as we get ready for the rest of the day, I'd like you all to remember that management can be highly exciting and highly rewarding. Good managers are constantly striving to improve themselves and their techniques and their employees. And I'm sure that's why you're all here today. So now, let's take a short break and meet up for our next session in 15 minutes.
1. Who are most of people in the audience? According to the audio track, the most people in the audience were holding management positions. Question number 2. What are 2 examples of managers who are good role models? The first example, understand the company beliefs, and the second one is practice those beliefs himself. Question number 3. How does a good manager know the strengths of his or her employees? 1. He observes the tasks that his employees do well, and he also observes the tasks that his employees like to do. Question number 4. How should managers support employees? This can be done by 1. Reward the employees, and the second one by providing them with the tasks they like to do in order to improve their skills. Listening and speaking for Level 4 students. Chapter 10, Audio 2. listen to a presentation by a local business group. As you listen, number the main ideas in the order they are presented.
Hello, everyone. As you know, this month we're focusing on the growing trend of immigrant female business owners. After some facts and figures, and I think you'll be surprised to hear some of these figures, I know I was, I'll introduce 3 local women who will speak about how they got started and challenges they've faced. Finally, we'll talk about support for women in our community who want to become self-employed. Owning your own business, working for yourself instead of someone else, has long been part of the American dream. But the profile of the self-owned business and its proprietor is changing. 50 years ago, it was more likely to be a white male who owned a small business or manufacturing company. Using data from the 2000 census, the U.S. Immigration Policy Center noted that the number of businesses owned by women immigrants has increased 190% since 1990 and 468% since 1980. The number of immigrant female entrepreneurs has recently surpassed the number of native-born female entrepreneurs. In fact, they are expected to soon challenge the number of immigrant male entrepreneurs. Immigrant female entrepreneurs stand out as one of the fastest-growing groups of business owners in the U.S. today. The largest group comes from Latin America and the Caribbean, the second largest from Asia and the Pacific Islands. Unlike the Main Street hardware store or small manufacturing business owned by white males in the 1950s, the businesses these women are starting up reflect their diverse backgrounds and diverse needs. For many, it's economics that forces them into business. They need to support their families, and this seems like the only way. Foreign-born doctors, mathematicians, and teachers who do not know enough English to work in their fields take stock of their skills and the local market. Using their ingenuity, they embark on new careers, often starting in their homes, baking, sewing, or providing a service. But not all are in desperate financial straits. Some immigrant women start businesses simply because they now have the freedom to do so and they like being independent. Whatever their motivation, we need to acknowledge the impact of these female entrepreneurs as role models for other immigrants and younger generations. Furthermore, they contribute to the economy when they start to employ other people, including immigrant women. As they recognize their right to have a voice, they become more active in the business community and speak up for issues such as healthcare reform. Some even go on to lobbying in Washington and/or in state governments. One of the many hurdles these businesswomen face is access to capital. With no collateral, no credit history, and little or no professional experience in the business they are about to enter, these women are not likely to qualify for most traditional loans, especially those from banks. Help does exist through loan programs and grants such as the Count Me In program and the U.S. SBA microloan program. I predict we will see some changes and increased investment by mainstream financial institutions. Even the government recommends increasing startup capital and more training specific to their needs. I'd like to shift our focus now to our guests and let them tell us what they do and how they got started. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. My name's Connie, and I'm from Mexico. I own a small bakery. In Mexico, I was an accountant, but when I came here 10 years ago, I didn't speak English. I have 3 children, and we needed money, so I started making Mexican pastries to sell at the local farmer's market. As the business grew, it took over our apartment. Soon, we had 2 refrigerators in our tiny living room. I tried to get a loan, but the bank wouldn't even talk to me. One of my customers put me in touch with Count Me In. They gave me a loan so I could open my own bakery. Now I employ 6 people, and we are open 6 days a week, serving lunch as well as bread and pastries.
My name is Kim, and I moved here from Korea 10 years ago. My husband is American. I used to work in a bank in Korea, but when I arrived in the U.S., I didn't work at first. We had a small child, and I didn't want to leave him with strangers. We needed money, so I began babysitting for my friends. The children were babies and slept most of the time. My friends were happy, and I was glad to have the extra money. When I decided to expand into a daycare center, I had to apply for a certificate from the state and a loan. The forms were impossible for me to understand, and the bank was not encouraging. Only the Small Business Administration, SBA, helped me. I am sure I would not be here today if they hadn't helped. They were very patient.
My name is Lan, and I come from Vietnam. I own a nail salon. I started doing nails in a beauty salon, working for an American woman. When she retired 3 years ago, I didn't know what to do. I don't have to work, but I don't want to stay home all day. I like being out of the house and talking with other women. I wanted my own shop, but I didn't have enough money. My former employer introduced me to a SCORE volunteer who helped me apply for a loan. I opened my shop 2 years ago. At first it was just me, but now there are 3 of us, all Vietnamese.
Thank you, ladies. Now we'd like to hear your ideas. What kind of support is still needed?
The first idea presented in this presentation was A. The number of female immigrant entrepreneurs has increased drastically since 1980. The second main idea was D. Some immigrant women begin their own businesses because they have few other options for employment. The third idea is C. One of the challenges these women face is raising enough money to start and maintain a business. The fourth main idea was B. Many of these business owners need more business training and more cultural understanding. The last main idea was E. These women are making a great impact on their communities and the economy.